and there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics Live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another fantastic installment of Cowboy State Politics Live. From very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media, this is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone, and broadcasting to you from the base of the big... Oh, nope, not at the base of the Bighorns anymore. I'm in the depths of the Middle Swamp and in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Well, good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Welcome back to Cowboy State Politics Live. We're down in Cheyenne and during the legislative session, and as you can see, this is the new mobile studio. I'll try to dress it up a little bit as we go. But this is the best I could do on short notice. But anyway, yesterday the legislative session got underway. And really on day one, there's not a heck of a lot of stuff that happens. I mean, it's mostly procedural stuff, and they don't have any bills that they can go through. And the reason for that is bills have to go through committee first. So yesterday, about the only real work that was done is that there were a bunch of bills that were assigned to various committees, and not a lot of those actually. However, there were some fireworks in the Wyoming Senate, and if you pay attention to the cow pie, again, they've already started, and perhaps I should just start with the media. I feel like a lot of times, really all I do on this program is talk about the media, but there's so much material to talk to them about, or talk about them, actually. And in this case, Trotsky Wolfson is off to a fantastic start. So first, let me tell you what happened, and then we'll get into the media reaction, and then I'll tell you what the truth is, because what the media is reporting and what actually happened is very, very different. So in the Senate works a little bit different than does the House. The Senate has to approve any of the committee assignments and chairmanships that the president of the Senate makes. It doesn't work that way in the House. In the House of Representatives, the Speaker of the House chooses his chairman, and then that's it. There's no debate about it. There's no confirmation of any way, shape, or form. But in the Senate, the president, he does make the chairmanship selections, and he does assign people to committee, but all of those assignments have to go before the body. They have to be confirmed, and I mean the Senate really is in the people business, and they confirm, whatever selections that the president of the Senate made. So everything was going to plan in the Senate until they got to the Labor and Health Committee. And that's where Senator Larry Hicks objected to the appointment of Senator Eric Barlow as chairman of Health and Labor. And, this one is kind of out of the ordinary because usually the confirmation in the Senate of all the committees, that's just kind of perfunctory. I mean, there really is hardly ever any controversy surrounding it. But Larry Hicks got up and he said, I object. And he gave what I consider probably the best speech that I think I've ever heard Larry Hicks give. And here is just a piece. Let's see if I've got it here. Yeah, here's a piece of what Larry Hicks said on the floor of the House, or floor of the Senate, excuse me. Maybe it'll play. Here it goes.
Mr. President, I will be making a motion, and I want everybody in this body to know that. The motion that I'm going to make is not based on malice, but rather it's based on my own moral convictions, my sincere belief in fulfilling my oath of office as a senator in the state of Wyoming. Mr. President, pursuant to Senate Rule 8-6, I move to appeal to the body the decision of the President to appoint Senator Barlow, Chairman of the Labor Health Committee, on the basis of the following, Mr. President. Mr. President, Chairman, Committee Chairman have the prerogative and the power under our rules and our regulations to block or draw over any legislation that is assigned to that committee. We also have the ability to manage and assign bills to the point that we can run out the clock. Many of you have served as chairman. I've served as chairman. It's not an uncommon practice to end up with some bill in the bottom of a drawer. Mr. President, while our colleague certainly has the experience and has demonstrated the skills and the ability to serve as the chairman of a standing committee in this body, I find it only the Labor and Health Committee objectionable for our colleague to serve as chairman of that committee.
Okay, so it's pretty clear Larry Hicks is making that motion. Now, there's some rumblings going on social media and certainly in the cow pie as to the motivations behind Larry Hicks. Now, if you know Larry, he's very pro-life, and he clearly said that he's making this objection on his own personal beliefs. Now, given and I covered this in great detail on the podcast this morning. If you not listened to the podcast before, go to cowboystatepolitics.com or anywhere that you get your podcasts and just search for Cowboy State Politics and you'll find it. But this is a fascinating exchange because Larry Hicks knows that his motion really doesn't stand a snowball's chance on a Wyoming prairie in the middle of August of passing. Just if you take into consideration how the makeup of the Senate panned out, how all the committee chairmanships were assigned, 7 out of the 10 chairmen are really, really liberal, and the one in question, Eric Barlow, he voted with the Democrats last year 82.9% of the time. I mean, if you're 83% of anything, it kind of means that you're that thing. And Eric Barlow, man, that guy has had a long and storied history of voting with the Democrats. But his record on pro-life issues is a little bit more nuanced. It's actually kind of interesting. I spent hours yesterday going through his legislative record when it comes to pro-life legislation. And here's the rub of it. When it comes to voting on pro-life legislation, it's not half bad. He votes for pro-life bills more often than he votes against them. But here's the thing. I mean, it's kind of like being pregnant. You can't be kind of pregnant. You can't be sort of pregnant. You either are or you aren't. There's no real middle ground there. And that's my position on it. But so let me get my list out here. In 2013, and this is probably the first year I think it was the first year he was in the legislature. He voted against House Bill 97. House Bill 97 was the original bill that it would have banned abortions after a fetal heartbeat was detected. That is a stock is probably the wrong word, but that's a bill that gets passed in a lot of states that we don't want to have any sort of abortions after a heartbeat is detected, which, by the way, there's only 3 things that are necessary for life to begin, and a heartbeat isn't one of them. It's cell division, that you convert food to energy, and that you have response to stimuli. Every biology textbook on the planet will tell you that, except, of course, ones that are written by leftists. But anyway, so 2013, he votes against the heartbeat bill. 2015, let's see here, he voted against House Bill 156. That was requiring information be given to an abortion patient about ultrasounds. He voted against that one in committee. And there's the rub of it when it comes to Eric Barlow. When he's in charge, when he's the committee chairman, or if he's the Speaker of the House, he's very much anti-pro-life. I mean, he is very much pro-choice. There's a number of bills that he left in his drawer when he was Speaker of the House. Let's see here. There was an informed consent bill. There was one about discriminatory abortion. Well, he voted for that one. He put the abortifacients bill in his drawer. He voted against the trigger bill on introduction, and then he voted for it later. Discriminatory abortions bill, that's one banning abortions when there's something wrong with the child. That one he put in the drawer. And then Senate File 83, that was another abortifacients bill that he also put in the drawer. Let's see here, in 2017, and this is kind of where it got started, he was the chairman of House Health and Labor. And it was House Bill 132, more reporting of abortions, and he put that one in his drawer, and it died in committee. So whenever Eric Barlow is in charge, when he's the chairman or when he's the Speaker of the House, he's very much pro-choice. When he's not in those positions, his voting record isn't all that bad. But again, you can't be sort of in and sort of out on this one. You either are or you aren't. It's kind of like, so it's okay to kill little babies in this instance. Yeah, that doesn't work. Well, anyway, made that motion. Larry Hicks spoke for, 6 or 7 minutes on the floor. Then they held a vote. And there was only 3 people that voted to remove Eric Barlow, and that was Senator Sherry Steinmetz, Senator Larry Hicks, and Senator Laura Pearson. The other 28, they voted to keep Barlow. And that was the main point in Hicks's motion, is to get everybody on record to see, are you in favor of putting somebody who has a track record of being very pro-choice when he's in a position of power in charge of health and labor. And that's how it turned out. Now, that's not how it's being played on social media or in the Wyoming press. Just give me a second here, and I'll pull up the cow pie, and we'll read a couple segments. The article that Trotsky published, let's see here. Politicking, or no, maybe. Hold on. There was 2 articles. No, this one isn't it. Anyway, so it talks about fireworks. Here it is. The title of it is First Day Fireworks in Wyoming Senate Over Abortion, Pick for Committee Leader. Here is what Trotsky Wolfson says, and I quote, "During the committee confirmation process in the Wyoming Senate, which has historically been a relatively procedural process," he's right about that, "a call was made by Senator Larry Hicks to reject Senate President Bo Beitman's nomination of Eric Barlow." And here's where into the weeds with the cow pie. Quote, "Barlow's voting record appears to be consistently pro-life." Well, his voting record is, but that's not what we're really concerned about. But Hicks told the Cowboy State Daily that when Barlow was House Speaker, he kept certain abortion bills in his drawer and sent others to committees where they wouldn't have a chance of passing. And that's absolutely the case, certainly with him, his bottomless drawer for pro-life legislation. And let's see here. And then Eric Barlow went on the floor to defend himself, which, everybody gets a chance to do that. And for once, he actually spoke the truth. He said that he voted for the Life as a Human Right Act. That's correct. He voted for that one. And he voted for the abortifacients bill. But he missed one. In 2024, he voted for the regulation of abortions bill that Governor Mark Gordon vetoed. So, voting wise, yeah, he's been doing pretty good, but it's what he does when he's in charge of a committee. And that is really, really terrible. So anyway, that's pretty much all that happened in the Wyoming legislature yesterday. There weren't really any fireworks in the House. Everybody was put into there. The speaker was put into office, the speaker pro tem, the votes were taken, they assigned some bills, and then they were out of there. Now, today in the Wyoming legislature, starting at 10 o'clock, there's a joint session, and it's held over in the House chamber, and the good Governor Gordon is going to give his State of the State address, no doubt. He's going to be long-winded about how incredibly conservative he is. And then Kate Fox will do her State of the Judiciary address. It's all pomp and circumstance, and they'll probably... My guess is they'll probably get to work right after the Senate leaves the House chamber. They'll all get to work. So really, the first committee meetings that are being held this morning. So there is a chance that there could be some floor debate today in both the House and the Senate. But there's not really going to be a whole heck of a lot of work to do. So anyway, that's your update from the Wyoming legislature. Let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, because we were all paying attention to I was paying attention to what happened yesterday. I missed the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing. There were some fireworks, and we're going to talk about it when I come back. First, some messages from our sponsors. Christmas is over, and all of the fun holiday cheer has been had. And what are we all left with? Frigid Wyoming weather. Below freezing temperatures that you still have to go out in. That's right, you do have to go back to work at one point or another. And not to scare you, but think about this. Every single morning, you get to scrape the ice off of your windshield. Now, while I can't do anything with that, I can make sure that your feet stay nice and toasty warm while you're doing it. All you have to do is order a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. And to get you a pair of them, go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you're not going to be disappointed. Wyoming is one of the most sought-after places to live. There's a lot of people that want to move to our great state. And if you're thinking about selling your house to one of them, you need a real estate agent that you can trust. That agent is Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She's lived in Jackson for almost 20 years and has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market. Last year, she sold almost $25 million worth of property. So if you're thinking of buying or selling, give Rebecca a call. Her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. Never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Welcome back to the program, my friends. David Iverson in the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne. Now, you may think that the swamp in Washington, D.C., well, nothing could be as deep as that. But the more time you spend down here in Cheyenne, you'll realize that while the breadth of the Wyoming swamp may not be nearly as wide as it is in Washington, D.C., it is most definitely as deep. There are backroom deals that are made all the time, backstabbing that goes on. I mean, it really is a political swamp down here, and you can tell. And there's backroom deals that are made all the time, and if you're not careful, you'll get caught up in it. So that's why I'm here to report on all of the nefarious plans and plots of the Redcoats that are happening. So anyway, I'll keep you updated as whatever's happening in the Middle Swamp. And we're going to do that every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. here on Facebook, on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, and on the Independence Network, which I'll be advertising probably later today. I've got to restart the Facebook page, and we'll get some more information out to you. Normally, we would have some phone calls, but I've got a lot to cover today. There's a Pete Hegseth hearing, lots of sound bites to talk about there. So probably won't get to any phone calls today, but we will shoot for tomorrow in doing so. But anyway, it's Cowboy State Politics Live. It's Wyoming's conservative voice, the most listened to conservative program in the state of Wyoming, and one that is diametrically opposed to all of the redcoats in the Wyoming media. So let's get to some national news here. Joe Biden has written a letter, a farewell love note to Americans. But it's chock full of self-praise, celebration, and self-applause. From Breitbart, and I quote, President Joe Biden issued a farewell letter to America on Wednesday, ahead of his departure address. The self-regarding missive highlights what he claims is a legacy built on personal examples, leadership, strength, willpower, and triumph over adversity and commitment. Calling himself, quote, a kid with a stutter from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, who rose to the highest office in the land. The octogenarian now wants Americans to build on that personal example, the personal examples of graft, and referring to his opponents as
The only garbage I see floating out there is just supporters.
yeah, mistreating conservatives at every move, keeping people in jail in Washington, D.C., and having his DOJ prosecute anyone that was in the vicinity of Washington, D.C. on January 6th. Biden touted resilience during the Chinese coronavirus pandemic and its associated economic crises that as exemplars to highly regard, arguing, quote, we came together as Americans and we braved through it. We emerged stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. I don't know how he didn't throw up in his mouth with writing those last few lines there. It probably tells you that he didn't write this thing at all. And if he did, he may have been struck by lightning, because America is not stronger. Americans are not stronger. We've been living with double-digit inflation, and I don't really care what the Bureau of Economic Statistics put out. They don't count the real things that impact people each and every day, which is food and fuel. They don't include those in the inflation numbers. So the truth is that Americans have been living with prolonged inflation for a very long, the last 4 years that he's been in office. We're not more prosperous. It costs us, each and every one of us, more to live. And we're certainly not more secure. Look at the rest of the globe. There's Israel that's basically fighting what I would consider a 7-front war, maybe a 6-front war. It kind of depends on how you do the math on that. But the truth is, one of our strongest allies is at war, and the Biden administration has really done nothing to help them. In fact, they tried to thwart them at every turn, trying to prevent arms sales, prevent shipments of arms, being just almost hostile towards Benjamin Netanyahu. The rest of the world, think about Russia and Ukraine. That's not a secure place. And when you have wars breaking out all over the globe and you're the president of the United States, you can hardly say that the world is more secure. But he goes on. He touted the improved economy, including inflation coming, wages going up, and the job market rebounding since he took office. He also touted top accomplishments before leaving office, like that infrastructure is being built across the United States since he signed the bipartisan infrastructure law in 2021. And the U.S. is leading the semiconductor industry since the CHIPS and Science Act he signed. The president outlined that he, quote, beat Big Pharma by lowering the cost of prescription drugs through the Inflation Reduction Act. Keep in mind that it was Trump that did that one first, which he signed into law in 2022, and that he protected veterans exposed to toxic materials through the PACT Act that he signed in 2022. He also celebrated that he signed a bipartisan gun safety bill, took steps to fight climate change, and violent crime is down. Well, the truth is, violent crime is not down. It's up. Illegal immigration of violent criminals is also up. That he has done really nothing to fight climate change because climate change is not a thing. That didn't prevent them from passing what they called the Inflation Reduction Act, which was really just another example of the new Green Deal. They spent trillions of dollars on things that aren't going to necessarily pan out in the future. And it is absolutely, by any measure, the Biden presidency is an abject failure. And there's absolutely no question about it. But that doesn't stop Joe Biden from pretending that he's done a good job. And I quote, I ran for president because I believed that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. And that's still the case, Biden wrote, quote, America is an idea stronger than any army and larger than any ocean. It sounds like Cyrus Western was writing this letter for him. What I'm referring to is last legislative session. Cyrus Western was caught plagiarizing LBJ. I mean, the soundbite is vomit-inducing, but maybe at some point I'll dig it up for you just so we can punk fun at our pal Cyrus Western. But Biden was careful to set aside any claim of resounding victory in Afghanistan, given the world watched as its horrors unfolded. and in the years since. Let's not forget that one of the 13 soldiers that was killed during that withdrawal from Afghanistan was Riley McCullum from Jackson. So there's nothing that really Biden can claim as a victory, unless, of course, you include trying to destroy the United States economy with everything that they could possibly figure out. But there's also a piece in the New York Post entitled "Perpetual Screw-Up, Joe Biden Spins and Stumbles on His Way Out of the White House and Proves that Trump Voters Were Right." And I quote, in his last week in office, Joe Biden's making a farewell tour of speeches to try to put a shine on his legacy. He doesn't really have a legacy. In fact, he's having a hard time finding donors to build a presidential library because nobody wants a Biden presidential library. It's pretty telling when you can't find any donors at the end of your presidency to help you build one. Now, the presidential library is supposed to be a monument to that time. I mean, think about the Reagan Library. Air Force One is in the middle of it, or the Air Force One that Biden wrote on, or Biden wrote on, that Reagan used during his presidency. The presidential library is supposed to be, it's supposed to be a monument. That's why, presidents do. Now, Barack Obama's is yet to be built, and who knows how much money they've laundered to make that thing happen. It's almost like the Clinton Foundation. The Clintons left office, and they were just raking in money from all corners of the world, and they really never produced anything. That's probably what the Obama library is going to turn out to be. So, in this piece from the New York Post, instead of polishing his record, Biden's inadvertently highlighting what a total failure he's been and why voters were right to elect Donald Trump. Even as Biden paints himself as a big success, a Gallup survey captures the truth that large majorities of America have gone backward in key areas during his watch. These include the federal debt, immigration, the economy, crime, and the U.S. position in the world. The contrast is striking, but it's familiar. The White House and the Democrats spent much of the last 4 years denying what Americans could see with their own eyes. Remember, when Bidenomics was working, inflation was transitory, and the border was secure? Yeah, none of those things are true, and none of them actually happen. It's all just spin coming from the mouth of Karine Jean-Pierre, his lying press secretary. God, I can't wait until that person's gone. I'd call her a lady, but that would be misusing the term lady. But I am so sick of hearing her lie from that podium and things that are provable. Thank God for Peter Doocy questioning her at every move. I mean, one of his last questions is, Karine, what are we going to do without you here? It was absolutely amazing. Well, we're pretty much at the bottom of the hour, so let's go ahead and take another break. And when we come back, we'll get to the Pete Hegseth hearing. I've got a number of sound bites lined up for you. It's going to be a heck of a time. So we'll do that after the break. But just keep in mind, right? We're at a fascinating and exciting time. Trump's going to be in the White House. The Wyoming legislature is getting going. Did get going yesterday. A lot of fun that's going to happen. We'll have more after the break. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics live every Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on the Independence Network. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Cowboy State Politics is sponsored by FreedomGoldUSA.com. They are the working man's gold company. The economy is in turmoil. The stock market pretty much is out of control, and you never know what's going to happen with your finances or your income. One way that you can shore up everything is by investing in gold and silver. Go to freedomgoldusa.com/David for a free interview to discuss your options and find out if gold or silver is right for you. One more time, that's freedomgoldusa.com/David. Welcome back to the program. David Iverson behind the silver Cowboy state politics microphone. Documented to be almost always right. 98.97% of the time. A record that the mainstream wannabe Wyoming press cannot even come close to. And the truth is, every time there's a legislative session, their record just gets worse and worse. And I saw a tweet from Trotsky Wolfson yesterday saying, I predict that the governor is going to veto more pieces of legislation this year than he ever has. Well, Trotsky, your job is just to report the facts. It's not to opine on what you think is going to happen. That's the problem with journalism these days. You don't have people that are honest. You know, at least on this program, I tell you when it's my opinion, which is most of the time. But I back it up with whatever sources. I tell you where I'm getting the information so you can go look it up yourself. And when I'm actually doing journalism, which admittedly is not all that often, I think it's pretty obvious when I'm doing that too. And I back it up with lots and lots of facts. The mainstream Wyoming press, Trotsky Wolfson, the Cow Pie, the Prov on the Platte, Wild Pile, the Jackson Hole News and Guide. I got to come up with a fun name for them. The Wyoming Turkey Vulture. None of them do that. It's all opinion masquerading as journalism. So if you want the facts, come to Cowboy State Politics, and at least with my opinion, I'll give you enough information that you can form your own. Now, while I was paying attention to the legislature yesterday, Pete Hegseth was on Capitol Hill taking dumb questions from all sorts of Democrat lawmakers. And one of the funniest ones, well, I mean, there's a couple of funny ones, but the first one is Mazie Hirono. She tried to get Pete Hegseth to admit that he was drunk at work, which, according to all of Pete Hegseth's coworkers, that never happened, that Pete Hegseth was never drunk at work. But nonetheless, Mazie Hirono went after him. She used her time during Hegseth's confirmation hearing, and now I'm quoting from Breitbart, before the Senate Armed Services Committee to peddle the anonymous reports which a multitude of Hegseth's former coworkers at Fox News have refuted on the record and on air. Quote, I've read multiple reports of you regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know, and here's the question, and this typifies the Democrats in every way, shape, or form. It is the classic loaded question. When did you stop beating your wife? I mean, there's no right answer to it. Like any way that you answer it, it comes out bad for you. But her question was, do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ? So let's go ahead and listen to that soundbite. This one's great.
I have read multiple reports of your regularly being drunk at work, including by people who worked with you at Fox News. Do you know that being drunk at work is prohibited for service members under the UCMJ?
Senator, those
Yes
are
or no?
multiple false anonymous reports peddled by NBC
Do you
News
know that
run directly
drinking on the job
contradictory to
is
the dozens of men and women at
not
Fox News
contemplated
Channel
and
who
I'm not
I work
hearing-
with
I'm
who
not
came
hearing
on
the
the
answer to my
record
question.
and said,
I'm not hearing the answer to my question. Well, your question is stupid. Do you know that being drunk at work is not acceptable? Do you know it's against the UCMJ? It's the dumbest question in the world. Completely loaded. The only reason that Democrats go to these hearings is so that they can get sound bites in to pump up their base. Look what I did to this Trump nominee. And to suggest via anonymous sources and to accuse somebody based on anonymous sources of something is absolutely unconscionable. I mean, especially if you're a United States senator. But it just tells you that these Democrats are not in, I mean, their motivation is not to select the right person for this. Excuse me, that one came up on me. Their purpose is not to select the best person as Secretary of Defense. It's to make the Trump administration look as bad as possible and to try to damage in whatever way that they can the nominee that's before them. This is what Democrats always do. Who can forget the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearing that Joe Biden himself managed or ran? Joe Biden tried as best he could to damage the career and reputation of Clarence Thomas. The Democrats did the same thing to Robert Bork. Robert Bork was an excellent choice for the Supreme Court, and yet they went after him, and eventually he withdrew his nomination. Now, in Washington, it's actually a term, getting borked, which is to get unfairly grilled in front of a committee and them to drum you out of of the nomination process. But let's go ahead and finish what Mazie Hirono had to say. Try not to throw up in your mouth while we're listening to this.
In your
Never
opening
seen
statement,
that.
Mr. Hegseth, you commit to holding leaders accountable at all levels. That includes you, of course. And frankly, as secretary, you will be on the job 24/7. You recently promised some of my Republican colleagues that you stopped drinking and won't drink if confirmed, correct?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's not like that was a hard one. And, Pete Hegseth, I've watched him for a number of years on Fox News. And honestly, it's really hard to tell, to gauge the character of somebody that you're watching on TV. But all of the news reports of Pete Hegseth, everybody that has vouched for him, and it's a really long list of folks. And it's, I don't know, on this list, there's like 32 of them. 31 if you don't count the social media influencer on Twitter. But it's again, it's the Democrats' plan to try to damage any sort of nominee any way that they possibly can. And they do a pretty good job of that, except that all their questions are complete bullcrap. Let's see here. There's another soundbite here. This is Elizabeth Warren. And you know what? Let's see here. There's an article I've got here in the stack of stuff, which is really on the computer because I haven't bought a printer yet. Oh, by the way, I just noticed on the video cam that it says Sheridan, Wyoming. Well, it doesn't. I've got to change that. I'll have it fixed for tomorrow. We're in the middle of swamp. But anyway, I don't know. Squirrel moment. From the Federalist, the top 5 viral moments from Pete Hegseth's confirmation hearing for Secretary of Defense. And this one is particularly bizarre. I already gave you one of them, Mazie Hirono trying to, get him to admit that he's been drunk on the job, which is entirely not true. Let's see here. From the Federalist, and I quote, Virginia Democrat Tim Kaine spent his allotted time focusing on Hegseth's sex life. Kaine focused on a sexual relationship Hegseth had in 2017, noting that Hegseth had a wife at the time and had 2 months prior just welcomed a new child into the world, with now his 3rd wife, Jennifer, Rochette, something. A woman previously accused Hegseth of sexual assault after an alleged 2017 interaction between the two. However, reports say that the prosecutors did not bring charges due to a lack of proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and Hegseth also testified in the hearing the matter had been fully investigated, and he was completely cleared of any wrongdoing. Nevertheless, Kaine continued to push the issue. Here's what that idiot Tim Kaine said, and I quote, "So you think you are completely cleared because you committed no crime? That's your definition of cleared?" Kaine asked. "I'm shocked that you would stand here and say you're completely cleared. Can you so casually cheat on a second wife and cheat on the mother of a child who had been born 2 months before, and you let us and you tell us that you're completely cleared?" Now, notably, Kaine was the running mate of Hillary Clinton, whose husband had an affair with a White House intern, Monica Lewinsky. Kaine also endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris, whose husband, Doug Emhoff, was accused of physically assaulting and abusing at least one woman. And let's see here. Here is Senator Mullen responding to, let's see here. Yeah, I don't have another one in here. This is Senator Mullen responding to old Tim Kaine. Here you go. Take a listen to this. It's a little long, but it's well worth it.
Of the Secretary of Defense is, because I Googled it and went through a lot of different sites, and really it's hard to see, but in general, the U.S. Secretary of Defense position is filled by a civilian. That's it. If you have served in the U.S. Army Forces and have been in the service for, you have to be retired for at least 7 years, and Congress can weigh that. And then there's questions that the senator from Massachusetts brought up about serving on a board inside the military industry, and yet your own secretary that you all voted for, Secretary of Austin, we had to vote on a waiver because he stepped off the board of Raytheon. But I guess that's okay because that's a Democrat Secretary of Defense. But you so quickly forget about that, and then Senator Kaine, or I guess I better use the senator from Virginia, starts bringing up the fact that what if you showed up drunk to your job? How many senators have showed up drunk to vote at night?
Precisely, probably a lot of them. Oh, and that's another thing to bring up. Like Democrats, the world, the country over, engage in the biggest amount of hypocrisy that I have ever seen. I had to FOIA a piece of video from the Wyoming State Patrol from last year's legislative session where, I mean, it looked like a lot of people on that floor were pretty well intoxicated at the end of the session. I mean, this is a thing that happens at the state level, at the national level. And, it's go to a cocktail party and then, I can't stay very long. We got an important vote that has to happen. So I'll have a couple drinks and then I'll go vote. It is the Democrat hypocrisy. And he's going to get into it a little bit more with Tim Kaine. Let's listen to a little bit more.
Have you guys asked them to step down and resign from their job? And don't tell me you haven't seen it, because I know you have. And then how many senators do you know have got a divorce before cheating on their wives? Did you ask them to step down? No. But it's for show. You guys make sure you make a big show and point out the hypocrisy because the man's made a mistake. And you want to sit there and say that he's not qualified? Give me a joke. I mean, it is so ridiculous that you guys hold yourself as this higher standard and you forget you got a big plank in your eye. We've all made mistakes. I've made mistakes. And Jennifer, thank you for loving him through that mistake. Because the only reason why I'm here and not in prison is because my wife loved me too.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Everybody makes mistakes. Not everybody makes the big giant ones, but it's just a thing. The Democrats try to hold everybody else to a standard that they could not ever possibly meet. And it's pretty clear. I mean, Tim Kaine, talk about a hypocrite. Hillary Clinton, Mazie Hirono, all of them. Here's another one, and this one's actually pretty funny. So Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, tried to get Pete Hegseth to admit that he's a general. Of course, Pete Hegseth has never been a general, but here we go. From the Federalist, and I quote, "The crowd erupted into laughter when Massachusetts Democrat Elizabeth Warren tried to have a gotcha moment, but instead was the one getting got." She noted how Hegseth previously stated he didn't believe military generals should be allowed to serve in the defense industry for 10 years after they retire from service. Quote, "The question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is?" Well, actually, let's just go ahead and listen to it.
In other words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years. You're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals.
Notice she doesn't even skip a beat, right? Like everybody's laughing at her and she just continues with her questioning. I would have had to stop and laugh at myself if I'd been the one that makes such a dumb statement. Let's see here. There's another great exchange when Hegseth is defending his stance on Israel. And it was Tom Cotton who asked a rather simple but powerful question. And Tom Cotton's question was, "I support Israel's existential war in Gaza," Cotton said. "I assume, like me and President Trump, you support that war as well, don't you?" And I'll play you his answer here in just a second. But I don't know how you can be a Republican, frankly, how you can be an American and not support the war in Israel. Now, there's a lot of misinformation going out, lies, really, about the war in Gaza. First of all, the Gaza, and this is, I took a lot of heat, last year or after the October 7th attack when I said the following. The Gaza Strip, what's referred to as Gaza, is roughly the size of Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is about 60 square miles. So that means that in every acre, if you take all of the missiles that were fired from Gaza into Israel, there was at least one of them fired for every single acre in Gaza. So if you live there, let's say that you're one of these alleged innocent civilians that lives in Gaza, and you don't know there's missiles being fired from right where your house is, or right where, in the town that you live in. I mean, it's virtually impossible for them to fire that many missiles from all of Gaza and for you to not know about it. Secondly, civilians in Gaza were warned that the war was going to happen. In fact, Israel did everything that they possibly could, dropped flyers, made phone calls, sent texts multiple times telling you, get the heck out, we're coming. If you don't want to be hurt, leave. After the October 7th attack, now just think about this, for example. What would the United States do if Mexico sent that many missiles into our country? What do you think would happen? Do you think that we would attack and that we would absolutely respond? Absolutely we would. And no one would question us doing it. Now, that's exactly what's happening in Israel right now. But the left has successfully been able to demonize, mischaracterize the war in Israel for their own purposes. And let's just put our money where our mouth is here, or put all our cards on the table. Most of the Democrats are just anti-Israel. They support Palestinians, who, by the way, Palestine has never been a country in the history of the world. But most of the Democrats, they don't support Israel. So let me play for you Hegseth's response to Senator Tom Cotton. Now, this is kind of long, but just listen to what he says.
Big audience here. Many of them seem to be patriotic supporters of you, Mr. Hegseth. Some of them seem to be liberal critics of you. I would note that it's only the liberal critics that have disrupted this hearing. As was my custom during the Biden administration, I want to give you a chance to respond to what they said about you. I think the first one accused you of being a Christian Zionist. I'm not really sure why that is a bad thing. I'm a Christian. I'm a Zionist. Zionism is that the Jewish people deserve a homeland in the ancient Holy Land where they've lived since the dawn of history. Do you consider yourself a Christian Zionist?
Senator, I'm a Christian, and I robustly support the state of Israel and its existential defense, and the way America comes alongside them is a great ally.
Thank you. Because another protester, and I think this one was a member of Code Pink, which, by the way, is a Chinese Communist front group these days, said that you support Israel's war in Gaza. I support Israel's existential war in Gaza. I assume, like me and President Trump, you support that war as well, don't you?
Senator, I do. I support Israel destroying and killing every last member of Hamas.
And exactly right. Absolutely. Really, all the reports I've read, all the sound bites I've watched, Pete Hegseth pretty much emerged from that hearing unscathed. The Democrats weren't able to catch him off guard. They weren't really able to do hardly anything to him except ask really, really dumb questions, to which he responded, in my estimation, pretty well. The Pocahontas one, well, I'm not a general. Mazie Hirono, do you know what's wrong to be drunk at work? No kidding. Here's another one with Tim, see here, Senator Sheehy. You'll like this one. He asked
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hold on a minute. Sheehy just runs through a list of stupid questions that the Democrats are about to ask, and it's just gives Pete Hegseth the chance to respond to all of them, as ridiculous as they are. Oh, you know what? I just looked at the clock, and let's go ahead and take our last break. And when we come back, we'll continue with Pete Hegseth, and we'll finish up the program. It's Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson. I'll be back in a minute. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live on the Independence Network. You're not going to find a better source of news, information, and entertainment than right here on the Independence Network. Now, we're making a few changes, moving a couple things around, out with the old and in with the new, and that whole spiel. Of course, you could listen to my program, The Ramble Room with Ken Pendergraft, Locked and Loaded with the good Representative Tony Locke from Casper. There's a whole bunch more coming on the Independence Network. Also, don't forget to check out the article section at the website, independencenetwork.us. It's loaded with op-eds, commentary, and news from all around the Cowboy State. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Cowboy State Politics live on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, on the Independence Network, almost everywhere. It's almost like I'm omnipresent, which is good because nobody else is doing the job that Cowboy State Politics is doing. And certainly the Wyoming media can't even hold a candle to it because the only thing they're able to do is absolutely lie to you. Before the break, we were talking about the Pete Hegseth confirmation hearing and how some of the Republican senators were doing a good job of exposing the idiocy that is the Democrat Party and all of the questions that she asked. So I was going to play for you a soundbite from Senator Sheehy, in which he asks some of the dumbest questions that, gives Pete Hegseth a chance to respond to some of the idiocy that's probably going to come from his Democrat colleagues. But just listen to the questions, okay? These are questions, and you'll say to yourself when you hear them, yeah, I've heard Democrats, utter that same bull crap. But just give it a listen here. Here you go.
Pete, I'm actually going to ask you questions because I want to hear your answer. How many genders are there? Tough one.
Senator, there are two genders.
I know that well. I'm a Sheehy, so I'm on board. What is the diameter of the rifle round fired out of an M4A1 rifle?
Yeah, okay, admittedly, Democrats wouldn't know that one. But, why not? You're going to be the Secretary of Defense, so, you should probably know that. Though I wonder if Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin even has any of this knowledge. But simple questions that you would think the Defense Secretary ought to know. Here you go.
That's a 5.56.
How many push-ups can you do?
I did 5 sets of 47 this morning.
What do you think are most important strategic bases in the Pacific?
In the Pacific, Guam is pretty strategically significant.
How many rounds of 5.56 can you fit into the magazine of an M4 rifle?
Yeah, another one. Democrats are going to have no idea. I mean, they'll just say, scary looking weapon, and they'll run away terrified.
Depends on the magazine, but standard issue is 30, Senator.
And what size round does the M9 Beretta standard issue sidearm for the military fire?
A 9mm, Senator.
What kind of batteries do you put in your night vision goggle?
Duracell.
All right. So my point in playing you that soundbite is those are all questions, and I kind of misled you from the very beginning because Democrats are not going to ask those sort of questions. They don't really care about the specifics. They don't care that the Secretary of Defense knows the day-to-day struggles or what the soldier goes through on a day-to-day basis. But those are things that you have to know, as simple as they are, and some of them are probably going to help keep you alive. But that's the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. Republicans want a defense secretary that can connect to soldiers, that knows the day in, day out struggles. The Democrats want somebody that's an elitist that is going to govern from the top. Well, there's a difference between Republicans and conservatives conservatives and Democrats in this respect, that the Democrats would prefer to have an elitist. Somebody who is going to push their social agenda from the top. Conservative Republicans were more interested in getting the job done, which would require somebody actually knowing what the job is and having done it before. There's lots more where these sound bites come from with Pete Hegseth. He got a whole bunch of them laid up that we're not going to get to. But the point is that Trump made some nominations that are spot on. If you spend any time watching Pete Hegseth on Fox News, he talked about his military service a lot. He's a super patriotic guy, and it doesn't really matter what attacks the Democrats leveled at him. None of them are going to stick. None of them are really really serious questions, trying to pin him down. Oh, were you drunk at work? Would you work for the defense industry? I mean, it's all ridiculous, nonsensical, elitist questions. And the Democrats know that Pete Hegseth is not really going to have any problem sailing through confirmation. And so right now, the hearing is nothing but a chance for them to have some sound bites cataloged. Well, anyway, that's the long and the short of it today. After the program, I'm headed back to the Capitol. I don't know if I'm going to make the governor's drivel, and frankly, I won't get there till probably 9:30. So I don't even know if there'll be a seat available. I'll probably have to hang out in the gallery and just, out in the hallway and just wait. But that's okay. I've heard Mark Gordon go on and on about how conservative he is enough times. But on tomorrow's program, I'll keep you updated on whatever happened today. I'll have some sound bites from the governor's stupid address, and if there's some debate that's on the floor, hopefully I'll get a couple of sound bites for that. But for now, make sure that you keep listening to Cowboy State Politics on the morning program, on the podcast. Make sure you go check that one out. It's all about Eric Barlow's record on pro-life bills, as sad as it is. When he's in power, he does a really bad job. So it's, anyway, go check that out, the podcast, and I'll see you tomorrow. And for now, from the depths of the Middle Swamp in Wyoming's capital of Cheyenne, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics.